Welcome to Never By the Book podcast. This is your host, Kelly Schols. At 24, I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. By the age 40, I was completely debt-free and a multimillionaire. Now I share my secrets of success and transformation to audiences around the world as a speaker, author, coach, success mentor, and of course, your podcast host. Each Never By the Book episode features a guest who has overcome obstacles to build an incredible life of fulfillment. My guest today is Tab Pierce, speaker and author with an inspiring Rise from the Ashes business story. After many years of growing a successful cybersecurity business, Tab made a few poor business decisions and found himself nearly $750,000 deep in business debt. On that day, he had two choices: declare bankruptcy or claw his way out of the mess he'd created. Today, Tab shares hard lessons he learned trying to keep his business afloat, his own head above water, and reaching a level of success he never thought possible. Hey, Tab, it's great to have you here.
And Kelly, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So you've had quite the success story, but had been through a lot of hardship to get there.
Yeah, a lot of hardship. I'd love to say, maybe I wouldn't love to say, but maybe I would, man, I had no issues, never any issues, but that's not the truth. The truth is there's a lot of hard lessons learned along the way.
Yeah. And as you and I spoke the first time, we have a lot in common, have been through a lot of hard lessons and commonality in our stories.
You mentioned the few poor business decisions. Man, it felt like more than a few, but it was a few that really stood out, and it was those business decisions that just crippled me personally and emotionally. And in the book, as you've read, I spent about 2 weeks just sitting there on a lazy boy chair in front of a TV set, just like thinking every negative thing possible about how much I sucked and what a failure I was and a fraud and all that. And I wrote a chapter. I wrote a letter to myself about my thoughts, because I just had like this moment of clarity where it was like I just had like this. Maybe it was a gift from God. It was just like I felt really good amongst this whole. It was like the eye of the storm almost, and I wrote this like letter to myself, which I put in the book, but I felt like it was like super melodramatic. And I almost didn't put it in the book, but it was a letter that I penned to myself. And then I wrote a chapter. I wrote this kind of experience I had on thoughts, and then I jokingly said chapter 1. I wrote chapter 1, and then later on, I wrote this chapter, the chapter "Burn Baby Burn," really to kind of get myself motivated. And it wasn't even supposed to be a chapter, and it turned out to be. I jokingly said chapter 2, and that's when I went, oh, I guess I'm writing a book, and that so it started. So the book really started with me in the midst of this just horrible situation. And I kind of started writing it, as I went through it. And then at the end of the book, it's really about being completely out of debt, company doing great, emotionally being a different person, and all the lessons learned along the way. So that's kind of in a nutshell about the book and that.
Well, I want to read, which is chapter 2, which was your first chapter, correct? Because your wife wrote your first chapter for the book.
Yeah.
But I want to read the very first paragraph of your first chapter. This is a cautionary tale to be used in business and life. My intent is to press upon you that if an average everyday knucklehead like me can get out of trouble I got myself into, then you can do it too. There is hope, there is light, there is strength, and most importantly, there is a level growth you can gain by sticking with your problems and overcoming them.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, like I say, that's the first chapter that you have in the book. But I agree with you too, because I look at myself and the knucklehead things I did, and I came through them as well.
Are
you
you
know,
still doing knucklehead things? Because, dude, I'm still doing knucklehead things, man. I
I
haven't stopped that, man. I'm trying, but I keep doing them.
do we ever stop? But you know, you talk about it in your book too, is having failures. I don't like to think of things as failures. I like to think of them as lessons.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to fail.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to move forward, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So here you find yourself, and you know, for the people listening, it wasn't that long ago that you went through this.
No, it wasn't.
And here you find yourself $750,000 in debt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
oh, go ahead.
so what was it? 3 years ago?
Well,
4 years ago?
I think it was about 5 years ago,
5
give or
years ago.
take, that
Okay.
we had the realization of where we were at. It was about we're coming up on 2 years that we paid it all off, that we're
Okay.
done. I think it's June or July 18th. It's
So
starting to fade.
how does somebody all of a sudden find out they're $750,000 in debt and then figure out how to crawl out of that and keep your sanity?
Oh, sanity. I gotta keep my sanity too. Oh, well, that's probably the most difficult part. It's hard for an insane person to keep sanity. The finding out about it shouldn't have happened as abruptly as it did to me, but I just was thick-headed. And my accountant at the time, who is also my middle son, so we had that kind of weird dynamic of him being the accountant and me being dad. He was, constantly like, hey, this is an issue. This is an issue. We got this thing coming up. And, it just finally one day he just said, you got to sit down and listen. You have to sit down and listen. And so I sat down and listened, and it was like, I was fully prepared to like plead my case of like why he had no clue what was going on and what,
Yeah.
I mean, I was delusional to the end. And then as it started to sink in, I just went, oh, holy crap, this is real. And, I immediately do what most people do. I bawl like a baby. Then after I did that, I started going to people I know and that peers in business and asking for suggestions. Come on, what would you do? And most of them said, you should probably shut your doors, file bankruptcy, and go get a job or do something different or whatever. Which I would love to say I didn't do, because I that's not who I am. I didn't do it because $250,000 of the debt was owed to the IRS. Now, maybe I wouldn't have done it anyway. I don't know, but that was like the front and center hook of why we didn't do it. And it was a chore beyond chore to get the motivation needed to drag out of that, to come out of it. It was like a lot.
Mm-hmm. So you find out, you finally get, your son actually gets to hit you upside head with the 2x4 instead of you hitting your son.
Yeah.
And rattles you. How did you dig deep enough to be able to come through that and be able to have the perseverance to be able to do that, and in such a short period of time as well?
Well, the interesting thing is I'm writing my second book right now, and I just today wrote about how I can almost take anything that I believe as a conservative approach to creating something or accomplishing something. I can take that conservative approach, and I can almost without failure multiply that by, it's going to take me 3 times longer to do it. Yeah. And I thought we'd get out of it in like a year. I was like, oh, we got a year to get out of it. It took 3. But it really, it started off, as I can talk about in the book, for about the first 2 weeks, I would go to work and I would just go through the motions and just beat up and drained and just, physically just spent. And people would say, now people are like, oh man, you were a warrior. You went to battle, you picked up your sword and you handled it. And I'm like, early on, I was like a warrior that was forced to go to battle, because if I didn't go to battle, there was going to be someone who was going to kill me behind me. So I go forward to somebody that might kill me in front of me.
Yeah.
But I would drag my sword to battle. And it was a gradual process of becoming the person I needed to be. And so really, I remember a few things. One was having to like motivate myself, like, just like, yeah. Oh, just like get myself super excited. So when I'd walk into the office, people wouldn't see this guy with his shoulders
Right.
rolled in and head down and like, hey man, how's everybody doing? So I'd like, yeah. I'd drive down the road, yeah. And people looking at me like I'm crazy. I'd walk in, I'm like, hey, how's everybody doing, man? Everybody, and then I'd walk into my office and be like, oh man, am I tired? I'm exhausted, just like everything out of me. But one of the biggest things that really transformed me was just kind of this idea that after a while I was like, man, I gotta have a good day. I just had to have a good day, and I'm gonna plan the day out, and I'm gonna follow it, and I'm gonna just have a good day. And things don't have to go as planned. Things don't have to go well. They may go tremendous, but at the end of the day, I'm going to put my head on the pillow and I'm going to just go, I did everything I said I was going to do, because I didn't have the energy to do that early on. I just, I barely had energy to breathe almost. But I did that, and I kept saying to myself, I don't even care about tomorrow. Tomorrow, I don't even care if I do it tomorrow. I just need to do it today. Right. And I remember the first time doing that, and then going to bed and waking up and going, okay, I just need to do that one more time, just today, not tomorrow. Don't worry about tomorrow, just today. And I started building a habit, and a habit of, that I was going to be successful. And then you start to get a little win, and you learn a little, like you talk about life lessons. These aren't failures, they're lessons. There's so many of them along the way that I can remember, like the realization that I owed people this money, and I felt beholden to them. I felt like, man, if I have to do anything I can to pay you back, because I'm outside of our original agreement. And then finally one day going, wait a second, dude, you're the freaking bank. And in order for them to get their money back, they have to do what you want, or what you say, and you're going to do whatever you can to get it to them as quickly as you can. But we're already outside of the agreed upon time, so there's that. And when I flipped the switch to that, I was in control of that. I wasn't beholden. I was in control. Here we are. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I controlled that narrative. Once I did that, that was like one of those things that I just went, oh, I don't have to be weak. I could actually be strong in my adversity. So it was like, kind of like that little line upon line, a little bit here, right, a little bit there.
Well, and there's a part in your book, and let me read this chapter. Here's the thing: when you're in trouble like this, and you have people hounding you for money, it's easy to shrink and hide. One way to do that is to overpromise and underdeliver, if I can get it out. It's not as if you set out to be deceitful. You just want easier pain and lower the blow that's being inflicted upon you. Don't. You must be realistic, and you need to be honest with all your creditors and your current situation. It's the same thing when I'm dealing with people and coaching people with financial coaching, is like you're saying, acknowledge that you got the problem, and then address it.
Yeah, and you own it. Yeah, and I can remember going to people and saying, this is when we're going to pay you. Mm-hmm. This is the plan. This is the schedule. And right, hey, by the way, I'm as conservative as I think I can possibly be to make sure that it hits, that you're going to get paid when we say you're going to get paid. And I know it's not what you want, but it's what we can do. Oh, and by the way, here's the asterisk. I still might miss a payment.
Yeah.
Because I may have still, as conservative as I believe I am, managed to overpromise. And and just own it. And people hate it, but they had to live with it.
But as you talked about in your book, creditors would back off then.
Yeah.
For a period of time.
Yeah. And man, as you've read the book, we owed a hard money lender about $250,000. And those guys were ruthless. I almost said ruthless, which it's a new word, ruthless. They're both brutal and ruthless. And having to learn to deal with that was, I hated it. But now it's like, pretty much anybody can bring anything on, and I'm just like, it's probably the worst thing I've ever had to handle is dealing with those people.
Yeah. But you got through it.
I did. Yep. And,
so the first chapter, your wife wrote the first chapter, and she talked about, some of the struggles you went through, some of the struggles she went through. She talked about you burying yourself into personal development to become a better person. Tell me how the relationship with you and your wife and your family, how that worked through all of this.
I smile and I kind of laugh because she wrote that chapter and I read it and I went, wait, are you kidding me? Man, talk about dense, man. She was the one person that I just opened up to and I vented, and she heard me crying and whining and worrying and everything else, and she would just absorb it, and she didn't have the outlet that I did, right? I mean, she couldn't turn around and go, oh my gosh, you're right. She'd have to go, she would just be strong, and she would be like, that's not true. That's not true. That is not the way this is going to end up. This is not going to end up that way. All the while just going, we're freaking screwed inside. And so, our relationship has always been strong, but it just became stronger. She, during that time period, had to be the one that was, the pillar, the strength, that rock. And she's like 5'3" and small, and dude, don't ever underestimate her, because there's been multiple times in my life where I'm like, duly noted, I will not step over that line again, ever. And just so our relationship has gotten better. Now we work together, we spend pretty much all of our time together, and it's great, and our relationship has grown. My oldest, or my middle son, who is now the president of my company, our relationship got stronger, it got more professional. Where at work we're no longer dad and son. I think he's the boss and I'm the but we're slowly but surely migrating me out of the day-to-day activities of the company, and which is a whole nother podcast and a whole nother story in that, but that's where we're at. And so those relationships have gotten a lot better, really good.
Well, and you talk about that in the book, is turning to people that you can trust and adhere to and take advice from. And when you go through a struggle like that, to sit and try and do it all to yourself, I mean, you're just going to spin circles.
Yeah. And oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I started reaching out to everybody, right? And I would talk to people, and I would say, especially men, I'd talk to them, I'd go, how's business? And they'd go, business is great. And they'd go, how's it for you? And I'd go, dude, it freaking sucks, man, and blah blah. I was vulnerable and honest, because I was looking for a relief. And then they would go, truth is, things aren't as good as I say they are. women would just go, yeah, they're not as good. They're not as good, or they're great, and they were more believable. Men, that whole facade,
Oh yeah.
and so I started a peer group, what we call an advisory board. After several people are like, hey, you ought to do this and bring people together. And so then we had that, and then it spawned a second group, which spawned a new company called Refiners. That so I say that because it's really interesting that we look at this situation in our life as and I marked that moment in time when I found out that we were in that debt as the worst day of my life, or one of the worst days of my life. And the truth is, I shouldn't have labeled it at all. It was Naveen Jain that scolded me and said, "Don't label that." But it was really one of the best days of my life, and I didn't even know it. So, and it spawned all these other things. Without what happened, that all this crap, my company wouldn't be as strong as it is. I wouldn't have written a book. I wouldn't have, started this refiners company. We wouldn't have had this big, massive refiners conference with all these crazy people, and I wouldn't be doing this coaching, right? So, what I perceived as failure was actually, a gift from God to refine myself. Oh, did you see what I did there? Refiners refined. Yeah, that was not even intentional.
That was a good flop right there. Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit. I want you to tell me, when you're going through it, you're trying to figure out how to pay the money off, you're working through it, you and your wife were sitting down. I know we talked about this before, a lot of grit and determination. A lot of people give up. Yeah. And when I'm coaching people on finances, I mean, I've had people that are, $28,000 in debt, and they're ready to declare bankruptcy and give up. It's like, no, let's have some grit, determination, and some hope, and one little thing at a time, and then move forward. You haven't talked about not only your business, but what did you do besides your business to help you get out of that?
Yeah, and I'll take a little detour real quickly. I remember being about 26, 27 years old, and probably being $25,000 in debt, and just I had had a bad day, and I just remember curling up on my bed in the fetal position, rocking myself back and forth, like, oh my gosh, and I'm like, I look back at that with laughter, because I'm like, pretty much every one of my days in my life right now are worse than that day, and my days are great. So we mature and we advance, and we do that. I took very little money out of the company. I used my personal savings. I did everything I could to keep the company afloat. I started driving Uber. My wife was driving Uber. At the same time, my mother was going through, she had cardiac arrest, or cardiac heart failure, and ultimately went through hospice. We were going through all that stuff at the same time, but we were driving Uber. We were doing whatever we could just to keep things afloat, because we knew that at the end of the rainbow, there was just going to be this much better situation. And truth is, we had no idea that, somebody would have said, hey, here's a magic wand, paint what it's going to look like in 2 years after you pay the debt off. We wouldn't be where we're at today. I wouldn't have painted the picture. I wouldn't have even thought to go this far. So, you have to have that grit, and you have to do whatever it takes, and don't be proud. Man, who freaking gives a crap? Just go drive Uber, go wash dishes, go do whatever, man. I mean, you just do it until you don't need to do it anymore.
Well, and that's the thing, is now everybody wants instant gratification. I mean, how many times have you heard, oh, I wish I had your life?
A couple times, I mean, I say that as tongue in cheek. And I mean, my wife and I just bought a new home in Mesa, Arizona. And that we're here right now, and we're heading back to Seattle here in a week from tomorrow, and we'll be back here in the fall. I mean, people are like, oh man, that's so cool that you get a like dual residency and go there and go there. And like, man, you got this awesome life. I'm like, it just happened, man. I just I just went to the state of Washington and got a license to run a business, and the money just flew, man. I mean, it's like, is that what people think? Because it's like, man, there's like a lot of pain and I mean, there still is, but actually, let me retract that. I love my life, and I always got to be careful of the words I say. That
Right.
I'm really not in pain. It's not bad. It's great. It really truly is. Everything's a unique challenge, but in order to get to where I'm at, yeah, man, you have to go through it. There were days when I would tell people, I feel like I'm walking through mud. That's how I emotionally felt. Like every step was labored. But now, you know what? I love the steps I take now, so much more appreciative than I did
Yeah.
at the time.
Well, you had said it once, people only see a moment in time.
Yeah.
They don't see the whole picture.
Yeah.
They don't see what we've been through.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
They don't see the grit and are they willing to put in the hard work, the grit and determination to get through it, to get to where you're at?
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about in because a lot of the training that I'm doing right now is really helping people take their vision and make it a reality. And one of the things that I've learned is that there's really three kinds of people. There's people that are in survival mode. They're in what I call struck gold mode, where it's like things are going great and they've got it, but they still got that hunger and that primal drive, that instinct to do it. And then there's the middle, which is the majority of people, which are just in sustain mode. Hey man, I got my stuff. I'm gonna go home, watch, it's binge time. I got a 3-day weekend. I'm gonna watch, all of whatever on Netflix.
Mhm.
There's something that has to propel us out of where we're at. And it's either gonna happen because we wake up one day and we're like, I have to do more. And I'm in sustain mode, but I'm going to move over to strike gold mode because I've got things. I don't want to lose things. I want to advance. Alternatively, we're in sustain mode, and then all of a sudden, we're in survival mode, which is what happened to me, right? I mean, I was like, hey, did it. I mean, I thought I was doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, life was like, okay, enough of that, dude. It's time to go survival. It's time to go primal, which is what I did. Everything we did. When I go back and I listen to my book, on Audible or whatever, sometimes I have to remind myself that I need to be that guy, that I need to have that hunger that I had then. And it's just a different, just a different mindset that we need to keep.
So here's a question. How do you go back into that mode? Because I do the same thing. I'll go back and listen to some of my old podcasts that I've been on, not ones I've done, but ones I've been on. And I'm like, I got to get back to that guy. So the question is, how do you get back to that guy? How do you get that hunger back? How do you get that thirst back, that drive, that grit, that determination?
You have to create something. You almost have to create an artificial survival mode, right? It's like, I'm gonna create this new thing. There's a guy, his name Michael Burt, goes by Coach Burt, who's like convinced me that I should be a coach and a speaker in this. And and early on I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, it sounds good because I've got the information, I've got the knowledge, I've got these things, I'll do it. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm treating this like I'm sustained. I'll get around to doing it when I'm ready. And then one day inside, I was like, what am I going to be like in a year from now? In a year from now, is this going to be who I am? Or am I going to be happy with where I'm at in a year? And so I project myself out into the future and say, if I don't do the things that I used to do when I was in survival mode, where am I going to be? And so I start to get that feeling of like, man, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be the person I can be. And I start making it very emotional and very personal because there's somewhere, if we think about what would I be like if I never, like if I was perfect, I never made a mistake, what would that person look like? And then there's where we're at today, right? Because we're not
Right.
there. And with this is not a reality. That's never going to happen. But somewhere in the middle of there is where we're going to end up, right? And so we have to sit there and tell ourselves, in a year from now, am I going to be here or am I going to be closer to this thing or this person? And you have to push to that, and you have to really get in there and just go, man, I don't like that feeling. And I go back to an incident that happened. My wife and I, we had a midlife crisis together, and literally bought the farm and started raising animals, and it didn't go that great, but we had like 25 chickens. I come home one day and 25 chickens, the coyotes had breached the perimeter. They had breached the fence, and we had 25 chickens just dead all over the place. Maybe 23. They might have taken 2 to eat. And of course, early on, I was like, I was angry. I was sad. I was like, man, I felt all these emotions, like, but then later on, I was like, there's a primal instinct that they have that is, I just do this. I go out and I do something, and that is I kill. And if the kill is there, I'm going to do it. Now we're humans, so we're not that primal, but what we are is we can sit there and say, I've got these opportunities. And what we do as humans is we go and say, oh, I had my chicken, and I got it from I got it from KFC at the drive-through, and I'm full, and I'm going to go and watch TV instead of saying, there's more. I can do more. I can push more. I can get more, but for the right reason. I mean, I love the analogy of a primal instinct, but we're humans, so we actually can reason and use that to our ability.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is some people, they try and set too much out instead of, set it out there, but then we'll focus on the day to day, right?
Yep, exactly. And that was one of the things that I learned. And I created this thing that I call the opportunity pipeline. And it really started with, driving into the office with my wife and just like, I'm sick of these to-do lists. I'm sick of tasks. I'm sick of this. And, and I just said, what I need is, and just being flippant and sarcastic like I am, I say, I need more opportunities. I need to go, this is an opportunity. That's an opportunity. Oh, look at that. Look at this, look at this guy mad at me. This is an opportunity. And we get to the office and I'm like, man, I oddly feel really good about this opportunity. I said, because I kept saying, I need an opportunity pipeline. And so I went and I spent days creating this, and really what it turned out to be was me being able to take anything and everything that I wanted to do in life and create it and take it from a vision to reality. And to me, that's it. I mean, the things that you put down in life, you better really want them. Otherwise, you just end up with a bunch of crap, clogging your mind that you're never going to do anything with. We all know people that have a million ideas and zero action.
Well, and that's like when your son finally hit you upside the head with the 2x4 and you found out that you did owe $750,000. You turn that into an opportunity.
Yeah.
You didn't realize it at the time, right?
No. Did not at all realize that.
But you did. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And through that, you come up with this great book. And for those of you who haven't read it or heard about it, it's Upsurge, Wreckage to Triumph, Rebuilding Your Personal and Business Life. Great read. I recommend it to anybody. If you can see it there. So tell us what's Tab up to today?
I continue to be the CEO of Caliber Security Partners. Like I said, I'm slowly but surely being phased out of that, partly intentionally and partly I think that it's the company's maturing and growing, and we're kind of moving on to the next phase, and that's that my son runs it and candidly does a great job at that. And then have refiners where where we're an advisory board group that it's peers helping peers. And so, working on that, writing my second book. I think I'm about 20% of the way done with that. Super excited about that. I have to keep telling myself to stop writing because I got other things I have to do in life. And then the other thing is starting to train. And I'm in the process of putting together my first live course, which is really about helping people understand what their vision is, how to make it concrete, and then really believe it, and then start to take it and make it a reality. And that's that's what I'm doing right now. So just a couple things.
Awesome. You talked about your opportunity pipeline. Is there a way that people can get a hold of that?
Yeah. So it is a continual work in progress. So
Okay.
it started off as a spreadsheet. It's still downloadable as a spreadsheet on tabpeers.com. I did, within the last couple of weeks, maybe a month, made it into an app, so it's available on iPhone and Android. But we also quickly realized that we needed a website that interacted with the app. So that's being developed. It's almost ready to go. And so if you go to and look up Opportunity Pipeline on either one of those platforms, or if you go to tabpeers.com, you can find it. It's a continual process, but I always tell people that don't just jump into it. Don't just start using it. You have to understand it. You have to understand what it is you're doing with it, because otherwise it just looks like a lot of stuff, and it's not. It's the ability to manage and control your life. Now, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And for those of you interested in it, I recommend you read his book because it talks a lot about that in there. And how can people get a hold of your book?
Well, they can find it at tabpeers.com. They can find it at Amazon on the Kindle e-reader, as well as the hard copy like you have, and then it's also on Audible for lazy people like me that want to listen and not read.
Hey, you're still learning.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one final thought. Of anything you could tell somebody, that somebody who's been $750,000 in debt, climbed out of it, and got to where you're at, what's a one thing you would tell my audience to really focus and study on?
Don't take the easy road. The easy road is so tempting. And I had somebody that I met that told me, after I had gone through everything, he said, I wish I would have known you before you went through it, because I could have made it so you didn't have to go through it. And I just remember going, wait, that was an option? I didn't have to go through this? And I was kind of like, well, now I meet you. Now, but once that initial feeling wears off, I'm like, but then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the lessons learned. And there is so much. There's so many people littered along the way, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They do it to themselves. They just end. They just stop. And you don't need to be one of those people. You just keep plugging away, because I always tell people, there's this whole idea of fight or flight isn't real. It's ultimately fight, because if we do a flight, ultimately we go down that path and we hit a wall and we're like, oh, I guess I got to go back and handle life, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately you have to fight. So fight fast and get in there and handle your life. The more you do that, as painful as it is, because watching TV is a lot easier, but the better you're going to be on and moving forward in your life.
And we all want to move forward, don't we?
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for being on, Tab. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah,
Truly
man, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, appreciate it. This is
Tab
good.
Peers, tabpierce.com or Amazon if you want to get the book. I highly, highly recommend it. So thanks everyone for listening and never buy the book. Share it with someone you care about, and don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. As we close today, remember, if you're not doing it by the book, it just might mean you're onto something great. Until next time, be great.